All right, we're now joined. John Clay, sports columnist, Lexington Herald leader, covers Kentucky. Joins us as they have coming off the win against LSU. And, boy, they're playing right there in the top 10 now, and they play Georgia this weekend. John, thank you very much for your time. Normally, of course, there's so much attention, especially with basketball starting, with what they do in basketball at Kentucky. How much has this football run meant right now in Lexington?
Yeah, it's big. I mean, they beat 2 weeks ago. They beat Florida at home for the first time since 1986. They had a sellout crowd for that game, and longtime Kentucky football fans say that's probably the loudest they've ever heard. It's now Kroger Field, used to be Commonwealth Stadium, and then follow that up with beating LSU, which another traditional SEC power that Kentucky hasn't had a whole lot of luck against over the years. And just kind of dominate LSU last week. And talking about basketball, Midnight what's not Midnight Madness anymore, the Big Blue Madness is Friday, which is kind of the unofficial opening of the basketball season. It's kind of like a big party atmosphere at Rupp Arena, and they kind of have an open practice where you can get a first look at the team. People are still talking about that, but not to the degree as in the past because of the way football 6-0 for the first time since 1950, 4-0 for the first time since 1977, playing the number one ranked team in the country on Saturday. There's a lot more attention to the football game right now than there is probably even the Big Blue Madness.
What's been the key for Mark Stoops in building that consistency and building them into this?
Well, I mean, he's built a really strong foundation. It's taken him some time. He's been patient. He's done it the way he wanted to do it. And he started out by building, a strong physical team that can match up in the SEC. They've had a strong running game the last few years. Just a level of physicality this program hasn't had in a long time. This year they made a change on offense, bringing in a new offensive coordinator with an NFL background in Liam Cohen because they wanted to be more balanced because they feel like to go to the next level, they need to have a better passing game. But still, they've relied a lot on the rushing game. But the other thing in developing the program, I think, is that Mark has done a really good job of evaluating talent and then developing that talent. You look at a guy like Josh Allen in 2018 as outside linebacker, edge rusher. He was like a 2-3-star prospect coming out of New Jersey, didn't get a whole lot of offers, came to Kentucky. He ends up the number 7 overall pick in the draft. This past year, Jamin Davis, a linebacker who was really not on anybody's radar all that much as a recruit, really came on his final season at Kentucky. He ends up in the first round, the number 19 overall pick by Washington. They had 6 players drafted last year in the NFL draft. It's been a long time since that's happened at Kentucky. He's done a really good job of evaluating talent, identifying players that will fit his program, and then developing those players.
Is this a game, John, where it's all going to come down to sort of the intangibles, in your opinion, the turnovers, the penalties, the things of that nature? I mean, I know that comes into play in every game, but, talent-wise, matchup-wise, a lot favors Georgia, obviously, and for a team that loves to run the football, Georgia doesn't give that up. So is this one of those where, you kind of have to hope some things slide your way?
Yeah, I mean, they got to play. They've had trouble with turnovers. They've done better the last couple of games, but the first year they were having problems turning the ball over. They can't do that against Georgia. They got to play a clean football game, and they've got to turn Georgia over, and they've got to hit on some big plays. You're exactly right. Even with Kentucky's strong running game, it's hard to imagine that they can grind it out against Georgia. They're going to have to hit some big plays in the passing game. They got a quarterback, Will Levis, transfer from Penn State. He's got a big arm. He throws a nice deep ball, but he's been a little inaccurate on his shorter and intermediate throws, and he's going to have some tighter windows against Georgia trying to fit that ball in there. The other thing I think they have to do is, and I talked to Gary Danielson today, and was asking him about what he thought, what did Kentucky need to do? One of the things he said, and I think he's exactly right, they need to hang around. They need to keep it close. If they can keep it close, then kind of the pressure gets on Georgia. Georgia's thinking, hey, we're number 1 in the country. How come we're not winning this game? We're playing for a possible undefeated season and a spot in the college football playoff. He said, they did the Alabama-Texas A&M game, and he thought that's kind of what happened to Alabama. Texas A&M hung in there, and all the pressure was on Alabama. So they got to play a clean game. They got to try to keep it close, and they got to find a way to hit on some big plays.
You know, one of the things, I was looking this up while you were answering Craig's question. I was going to ask you this. So Kentucky's been here before, right? Pretty close to it back in 2018. They beat Missouri, moved to number 11, and the next thing they know, they have Georgia at home. So this is not like completely brand new ground, although it is somewhat, I guess, new to them.
Yeah, when they played Georgia in 2018, they played them here in Lexington. It was basically the game for the SEC East title. I think both teams were 5-1 in the SEC at that time. So whoever won that game would go to Atlanta, and Georgia handled them pretty easily, 34-17. You could kind of see the gap in talent there. I think Kentucky's closed that gap somewhat, although Georgia's ridiculous on defense this year. But this time it's a little earlier in the year. Both teams have only played 4 conference games, but there's no doubt that whoever wins is going to be in the driver's seat in the East. But, yeah, they've gone through that in 2018. They played Penn State in the Citrus Bowl that year. Like I mentioned, they just had 2 big games against Florida and LSU. So I don't think this is going to overwhelm them on Saturday. I don't think they're going to get caught up in the atmosphere, too much. I know it's a college game day and a CBS game. But I think when it comes down to it, if they lose on Saturday, I think it's going to be obviously because Georgia's the better team. I don't think it's because the moment or the game was too big for Kentucky.
Are Kentucky fans nervous about Mark Stoops leaving at all at the end of the year and because he's got some heat now?
It's starting to. There's more conversation about that in the last couple of weeks because of I saw Bruce Feldman put out that he thinks Mark will be a guy who's in demand at the end of the year, depending on what happens. So there is some talk about that. I mean, Mark's put in a lot of work here to build this program. Whether he would want to, give that up and go someplace else, who knows? I do think, like every coach, I'm sure he would like to win a national championship one day. Whether you can do that, Kentucky, I don't know. And I think a lot depends too on what kind of jobs are out there. I don't think Mark is itching to leave. But if it was the right situation, I think some situations probably would be hard for him to turn down.
Yeah, it's interesting because in basketball that wouldn't happen, right?
Right.
And that's why it's Kentucky basketball.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's in some programs, no matter what, it's unfortunate. You'd love to see Stoops be there a long time and eventually maybe take him to another level.
Hey, we know here in Waco, John, the coach is always being rumored to go somewhere as soon as they find success. We know.
The way it is. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, another thing about Mark, though, in this particular situation, he's from Youngstown, Ohio, and they've done a great job of recruiting players out of Ohio. And that's been a big recruiting base for him. So, if he went someplace else, I'm not sure it'd be the same thing because, Kentucky, obviously, with Ohio, if you're an Ohio kid, and I'm not saying they're getting players away from Ohio State, but there's a lot of good players in Ohio. And some of those guys want to play in the SEC. If he went someplace, it might not have the same kind of recruiting base. I'm not saying he wouldn't have success there because I think he's a heck of a coach. But he's kind of in a sweet spot here from a recruiting base because of all his ties in Ohio. And Vince Marrow, his recruiting coordinator, is also from the Youngstown area, and they've really been able to get some pretty good players out of Ohio.
Okay, so what? Georgia, Kentucky, and then Georgia plays Florida in the largest cocktail party in the history of the world, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You kind of hope maybe they've been kind of feeling pretty good about themselves. Although I think Georgia's good enough that it appears as if they're good enough to run the table the way they're playing defense, but also a little bit of punch with their quarterback situation. Still not 100%. But who knows? Maybe I think it's great. I love this. I love the fact that Cincinnati's in the top 5. I love Kentucky being a part of near the top 10. Good luck, and I know you're enjoying it, John. Thanks for your time.
So thanks, guys, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And hopefully maybe down the road as well, John Clay is on with us. He covers Kentucky, the Lexington Herald leader. That's another thing I love about what's happened since the Texas OU story and how we've changed a little bit of what we are and what we cover in a lot of ways as far as or how we've changed a little bit. We would every year for the last several years, I'd say, hey, Paul, want a couple of recorded interviews. Hot teams coming off the weekend or hot games going into the weekend. We're getting that. We do that now almost daily. And it's a lot of fun, and we appreciate John Clay being a part of the show.
Can't believe neither one of you guys wanted to mention the name Cavassier Smoak, one of the best names in college football there on that Kentucky roster. Oh, yeah. Cavassier Smoak. That's a very cool name.
Is it really spelled the way we are?
It's not spelled the same. It's Smoke, but
cool name. I mean, he's got songs about him.
He's not related.
I mean,
now, it's cool though for Kentucky. I mean, Stoops has done a really good job there. I mean, that's not a job that you've probably ever heard any coach be like, yeah, I really want that Kentucky. You know, like it's just not one of those that's in that top 20 sort of mix all the time. Same thing here in Waco, but you know, he's slowly and surely built it up. I mean, they had the big success 3 years ago that you mentioned, and now to be in this position, I think it's awesome. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if you know, AD's out there looking at Lexington and going, that Mark Stoops guy. But no, he's just done a great job.
Famously, A&M got Bear Bryant from Kentucky.
Because
he had the best season in Kentucky football history right after Adolph Rupp had the best season in basketball history, and Rupp got a new Cadillac, and he got a watch and a lighter. And he was like, well, no, I think I see where I stand on the totem pole. So he went to A&M, where he did great there, and then went to a school that had girls, which made it easier to recruit.
Kentucky football players. Tim Couch didn't make it, but he was drafted, was he number 1?
Yep.
Yeah, I believe he was.
Babe Perilli, I remember that because I'm old enough to remember it. I think he may have even played with the Boston Patriots. Randall Cobb.
Yeah, he's back with the Packers and still one of those. I was happy when the Cowboys had him, but I remember when they were drafting, I was like, they should get this Randall Cobb guy. I love him, and then they didn't, and then they had him for a year.
Jared Lorenzen, the big, huge quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Art Still,
the round-mounted touchdown. Jared Lorenzen.
George Blanda. Let's see, Dermonte Dawson, hell of a player with the Steelers.
Hall of Famer, yeah.
Let me see here. There's a few more. I kind of running out of steam here a little bit. There's more and more.
Well, Jamin Davis, the one he brought up, plays for Washington, and you watch him every week. So, I mean, he's a rookie for them this year, and I know there's a lot of hope about what he can turn into. And I was glad to hear him mention Davis and kind of the unpredictable path. I mean, as far as, not necessarily being expected to be a super high draft pick, but had a really good year and whatnot, and now doing his thing in Washington. But yeah, I mean, they've had some players over here. That's the cool thing about college football too, is so much of it's wrapped around history. And so you can go to like any program and probably find 2 or 3 names.
Sure.
Like, I didn't realize he played there, or I didn't realize they had that much tradition or that many NFL guys. So yeah, I mean, you can go back and you may think of Kentucky only for basketball. There's a lot of football stuff to sort through as well. But right now, I mean, it's very cool that they're in this position. I mean, the odds are not great. Let's face it. Let's not try to blow smoke here and pretend like they're expected to hang with Georgia all the way to the end. But hey, if they do, that'd be a hell of a thing to witness, and I hope it happens because all due respect to Georgia, I want to see close football games. I want to see upsets. I want to see chaos. And Kentucky, they could certainly cause some chaos this weekend, even though they're ranked highly. That would throw everything for a loop.
No question about it. I would think that in that game, they would have to try to play the way Baylor played in their season in 2019.
I mean, it's going to have to be perfect.
Dummy it down a little bit.
It's going to have to be dummied down. It's going to have to be turnovers. It's going to have to be like a kick return, stuff like that, because they're not going to be able to just line up and run the football against Georgia. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. So I'm very curious to see how they do attack the Dogs and if they're able to find any success, because no one's been able to so far.
Cavalier Smoak. How about that?
That's a cool name.
From Wintumka with Jeff, Alabama. There's a player that we just had on the chat room. They said that, by the way, Kennard on their current roster will be a pro on the Kentucky roster. And
they churned some out last year, and I'm sure they will continue to. I mean, Stoops has got that thing rolling now. Once you do that, once you get that set up and you start to develop and start putting guys in. I mean, so long as he stays there, he's going to continue doing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, Wandale Robinson's going to be. I mean, he's going to be a guy who's going to get a shot because dude can boogie. The touchdown he scored against Florida, or just caught it on the screen and outran the Florida defense. That doesn't happen. I mean, Florida, even in their worst year, still has really fast guys on defense, and he just went straight through them.
He was a Nebraska guy, right?
So to go from your topic at the very beginning, I mean, you mentioned Kentucky, Georgia, but that's the game that could throw everything for a loop this weekend. I mean, that's the one.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not expecting it, but hey, if I was a Kentucky fan right now, I'd be freaking fired up for this weekend, even though you're probably just you hope it goes well because that's Georgia. That's just because of Georgia and how freaking good they are. But I'd be fired up if I was in Lexington, and I'd probably be making my way to Athens, as I'm sure a lot of people in blue will be this weekend.
All right, thank a lot.